Speaking of failures of the consensus neoliberal politics in this country, it looks like we're about to see the economy collapse yet again. Right? We're on the verge of another economic collapse, where we are seeing gilt yields soar past where they were after the fiscal event, based upon a UK wage growth jump. Now, what I will say is we're not going to get the same kind of collapse that we saw before. The pension funds are slightly divested from LDIs now. The pound is going up rather than down because of the rise in wages. So it's not going to be the same kind of economic crash, right? Not really a crash, I guess, more that the economy is just dying, right? Dying a slow death rather than a quick death, under Sunak and Hunt rather than Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss, right? The short-term gilt yields have soared above levels seen in the wake of the Liz Truss mini budget, following the largest wage growth rate seen outside the coronavirus pandemic. This is, of course, the best part about capitalism. Is when wages go up, that's now apparently a really bad thing. Despite the fact that we've been dealing with continual real terms pay cuts because of inflation for 15 years now since the global financial crisis, right? We've not really seen any wage rises in increase with inflation in that time, right? So we've got continually poorer, right? Most people are where they were as far as their wages concerned from 2005 in real purchasing power terms. And now that the wages are going up, now the economy's fucked because of it, which is great. We love to see it. We love to see it. But of course, a lot of this real issue is, of course, as was being pointed out here, is that the Bank of England is under pressure to raise interest rates because of a rise in wages, which they think is leading to inflation, which, of course, isn't. It isn't leading to inflation, as I've mentioned many times on this channel before, right? We have a cost of living crisis, right? The idea that essentially the unified right-wing idea that the only cause of inflation can be an excess of demand, usually because of an excess of the money supply, rather than cost-push inflation, which is what we have now, where the inputs to our economy, which is very reliant on imports especially, have massively increased in price, and that's having knock-on effects everywhere else in the economy. But you can't interest rate rise yourself out of that. You have to wait for the supply chains to fix themselves. You have to wait for the economy to accustom to the new input costs. And raising interest rates does nothing to curb inflation because the demand is already low. It's going to push us into recession, which they've said we need to have now apparently, right? Now that wages have started rising, now that people are actually having wages that are coming up close to inflation, for example, still behind though, still having real terms pay cuts, but there's the nominal wages are still rising somewhat, but too much for the Bank of England, no less. Because again, part of this I would like to point out is mostly because the Bank of England don't have any other way of controlling inflation, because they've been given the mandate by the Bank of Independence Act to always target 2% inflation. So as long as it's higher than that, they have to do something to try and bring inflation down because that's their target. And they only have really two ways of doing this. First of all, it's with the interest rate, and second of all, it's QT and or QE to affect the level of inflation. And they've already been bungling stuff with their failed QT that they did in, leading up to the mini budget, for example. And they're also failing on interest rate rises because they keep doing it despite the fact it's not having effect on the economy overall. You're trying to get a mortgage right now? Fun times. Enjoy that one, Emma Kelly. It's not happening very soon, at least the very rate. 'Cause more people are pulling mortgage products from the market at the very least, right? But that's the reason why the Bank of England are doing what they're doing. They've been told they have to match inflation. They have to get inflation down. They only have one method really and truly now of doing that, which is interest rate rises. And they have no choice because of their mandate, because of the Bank of Independence Act. There's literally nothing to do. There's nothing else that they can do. They've been told they have to do it. Unless you reverse the Bank of Independence Act and get the government to forcibly ensure that they don't raise rates when it's unnecessary to do so, right? That's how that mechanism works. And this is the issue, right? Is that we've seen a lot of people talking about the Liz Truss mini budget and how it really was necessary and she's now been proven right. And what's interesting is that there's kind of like this weird sort of half-truth in what they're saying. When, of course, she did crash the economy, right? The pension funds were over-leveraged and she didn't notice this, and that was her fault. The tax cuts were going to do nothing to increase the quote-unquote supply side, right? But she was, and her acolytes were indeed somewhat correct. The new tax rises were not going to fix inflation because, of course, the fact that people they wanted to do the tax rises to calm inflation, but was the same reason why interest rates are going up is to cool demand, because they fundamentally believe that the only thing that can affect theoretical demand the counter effect, inflation, is an increase in theoretical demand, and that's not the case, right? Demand is going down because people can't afford to live. Because of the cost of living crisis, it's a supply issue, and they fundamentally have no solutions for any amount of supply chain cost. I mean, literally, Milton Friedman said that cost push inflation doesn't exist, and cost push inflation is literally the reason why we have such high inflation now. We've seen supply chain issues, we're seeing war in Ukraine, we're seeing some issues, teething issues due to Brexit as well, which doesn't help matters in the slightest with regards to that because of import prices given our current account deficit that we have in the UK. And so we just have a right wing, an entire right wing, who cannot fundamentally deal with the issues of inflation that we have at the moment. They fundamentally cannot fix anything that's going on because their fundamental understanding of the economy is just broken and does not live within reality. Doesn't live within reality at all. Like there was this article from Alistair Heath that's kind of what I'm referencing here, is that there's a mortgage catastrophe coming and it will prove Liz Truss right. The sensibles believed higher taxes would stop interest rate hikes. They were calamitously wrong because the interest rate hikes were always going to happen because both the interest rate rises and the tax hikes are both methods of cooling demand, and neither of them work to bring down inflation. So the interest rate hikes will happen because the first part didn't work either, and so the second part won't work either, right? These are both fundamentally the same thing for the same ends, and that neither of them will work because this controlling demand channel that they have for trying to combat inflation fundamentally is not working, right? As I said here, he's half right that the centre-right have a myopic assumption about the excess of demand here, but they labour under a delusion that the tax cuts that Truss was promising they're going to therefore lead to greater supply of goods and services in the economy through investment with the extra money rich people have to invest with. But of course, we now know from 45 years of neoliberalism that investment does not happen. We have the least invested in economy in the G20, right? We have chronic levels of underinvestment. Torsten Bell was posting about this earlier on today, that we just, for decades and decades, we've just not invested at all in this economy because we have a state that refuses to invest because it's been run by neoliberals since 1979, and we have a private sector that refuses to invest because they know they can get away with moving all their money to the Cayman Islands, taking their money, putting it into housing, putting it into bonds, putting it into assets, right? Continually pumping up asset wealth. Assets have massively spiked in price over the last 13 years. Wages have stayed low. Consumer prices have stayed low until now. Because all of this pandering towards the rich has only led to them keeping their money within their Swiss bank accounts. It's not led to, as the supply side quote unquote increase, that what the people like the libertarian free marketer types like Liz Truss, etc., think that it should do. Of course, Liz Truss's tax cuts and her money budget were wrong for plenty of other reasons due to the perceived lack of fiscal responsibility in the government. But when we look at specifically around the issue of controlling inflation as a policy platform, it doesn't work either. It doesn't work either because what they want to do is increase the supply of goods and services in the economy so that supply meets demand rather than curbing demand to meet supply. But neither of these policies work from a right-wing lens, which is why the Conservatives are going to lose the next election, and also why they're going to call an election sooner than we think. The next election will be sooner than we think because they know they fucked it. They know that the economy will only get worse. People's mortgage rates, they will have to see their new rates on their variable, their mortgages, etc., etc. And when this thing happens, their support will fucking tank. They have to get an election in before those mortgage rates change. Once people, start getting their new rates, they have to have this done before the economic malaise gets any worse than it is right now, because they know the economic malaise is only going to get worse because they've tried everything that they can theoretically try from a right-wing perspective on the economy and nothing's worked. Nothing's worked at all from a right-wing perspective. It's screwing over their constituents who vote for them, and it's screwing over everybody else just as badly, but not as bad. They know that they have no solutions at all because they either curb demand or do right-wing supply-side economics, and neither of them would successfully deal with the inflationary crisis. And the worst part about all of this, is that Starmer is in an identical position. He's abandoned left-wing policies. The only good left-wing supply-side policy that we had was the green energy platform on the Green Prosperity Plan for example. Those are the only good policy we have, and they've already rode that back. They've already rode that back, right? They've already rode back the single thing they had which would actually deal with this stuff, and they're focusing back again on fiscal credibility, fiscal responsibility, right? The way we fix our economy is investment, state investment into our infrastructure, into public services, into future state-owned enterprises, for example. That will increase the supply side of the economy. That will bring down inflation. But they don't do that because they are right-wing. They are neoliberals. They're making the identical mistakes as Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, identical mistakes as them, right? They think that they can partner with business to try and increase supply side of the economy. Yet that won't work either, because again, the rich will not take the additional supply to then reduce prices for consumers in the economy. They will keep prices the same and then scroll it off to the Cayman Islands, right? They will use it, they will increase the profit. The same greedflation that we're seeing right now. There are no solutions that anybody is proposing from any side of this economy. Nobody is proposing any solutions. And Keir Starmer's going to get into power, and he's going to find out that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have served him a poison chalice by trying to call an election early. And they should. I think they should. It's only going to get worse for them electorally. They should call an election early to essentially put Keir Starmer into a position where he will almost certainly make himself lose the election because his economics are too right-wing. It's simple as that. It's simple as that. And I challenge any liberal who's watching this segment, any Keir Starmer fanboy who's watching this segment, come on stream, debate me, right? Show me what policies Keir Starmer has for dealing with the inflationary crisis. Show me what plans he has for dealing with chronic underinvestment. Show me the working. Because unless you can show me that working, you are going to elect somebody who's going to fail, right? And I warned you. I'm warning you right now. That if you don't pressure Keir Starmer on the economy specifically, which he will fail on, then we're all fucked. The whole country is fucked. And it will be the liberal sycophants for the red team who have no idea of policy, no scrutiny of policy, whose politics is entirely based on vibes and team sports, who will be responsible for continuing the economic decline of this country and the continued immiseration of the working class. It's up to you. It's on you, right? Now is the time to act. And if you don't act, will quite clearly get exactly what you wanted. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does help out the channel and the algorithm. And if you click the bell notification icon, it will let you know when I go live and when I upload videos. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my handle is @NoJusticeMTG, and that is Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to support my channel in a more financial manner, you can do so by becoming a member for just 99p, by super chatting, or by supporting me on Patreon, with the link is in the description of this video, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next segment.